The rain had started in the afternoon, a lazy drizzle that worked its way into the evening until it turned heavy and mean. By 9, the gutters were spilling, the maple in the front yard was whipping its wet leaves against the siding, and the old farmhouse sounded tired of holding itself together. The kitchen lights threw a soft yellow across the scuffed floor. 3 plates sat out with slices of pie no one had touched. The pie was my mom's peace offering. The plates were her way of pretending this was normal. "Evan," she said, voice too light, like someone trying to mask a cough. "Can you sit with us a minute?" Dad pulled out a chair for me. He never did that. He stood there with his hand on the chair back, waiting, eyes flicking once to the window where the rain ran in crooked rivulets. He was still in his work boots. They left dark prints on the linoleum. "What's up?" I asked, playing dumb, even though I'd felt it gathering for weeks, like that rain building since lunch. Their whispers, upstairs, the abrupt silence when I walked into a room, the way the calendar filled with blue pen, then red pen, 2 different lives sketched side by side. I sat, scraped my chair in, and let my fingers worry the edge of a napkin until it shredded into fluff. Mom slid a plate closer. "You didn't eat much dinner. I thought maybe you might want blueberry." I looked at the pie. The crust had a tiny crack at one edge, like it had been baked by someone whose hands shook. "I'm good," I said. Dad sat across from me and cleared his throat. "We love you," he said. He said it too soon. He said it over the thunder. My jaw tightened. "Okay." Mom's smile wilted. "We've been talking a lot," she said, "about grown-up things. It doesn't have anything to do with you." The clock over the stove ticked too loudly. The house had a way of making small sounds big when storms rolled in, like it was a drum. The rain slapped the windows. The maple scraped the siding again, a hush of wet leaves. Somewhere in the back of the house, something clicked, probably the old heater fighting the humidity. Each noise found a place between us, sat in the empty chairs, crowded the table. Dad folded his hands on the yellow tablecloth. His knuckles looked raw. "Things between your mother and me have been hard for a while." "I know," I said, even though I wanted to lie, to make them say it out loud so I could hate the words instead of guessing them. "I hear you all the time." Mom flinched like I'd slapped her. "We're sorry you had to hear any of that." "You weren't quiet," I said. It came out harsher than I meant. Thunder rumbled, long and low, the kind that seems to roll down the street and tuck itself under your door. For a second, the lights dipped. We all looked up like the ceiling could answer for it. Dad tried to smile. His mouth didn't remember how. "We wanted to talk together, not spring it on you." "You already did," I said. "You brought pie. That's never a good thing." "Evan," Mom whispered, "we didn't want to scare you." "Then don't say it," I said, voice suddenly loud in my own ears. "If you don't say it, it isn't happening." She stared at the fork beside her plate. "We're separating," she said, soft but steady, like a nurse pushing a needle into a vein. "We think it's best to take some time apart. We think it will be healthier." "For who?" My face went hot. I could feel tears building like pressure behind my eyes, trying to find a crack. "For you? For him? What about me?" Dad leaned in. "This isn't your fault. Nothing you did caused this." "I know it's not my fault," I snapped, even though a small, ugly voice in me whispered that maybe it was. That maybe the slammed doors and the grades that slipped for a while, and the time I lied about where I was, had stacked up like kindling. Lightning flashed white through the blinds. The lights dimmed again and steadied, humming. The fridge cycled off, which made the room feel hollow. A sound outside trickled through the storm. I thought it was the gutters at first, or the tree, but it came again, a tap on glass, delicate and wrong, like a fingernail on a jar. Mom turned her head. "Did you hear that?" It's the tree, Dad said too quickly. He looked toward the back hall that led to the mudroom. The back door had a loose lock that rattled when the wind hit it right. He'd promised to fix it. He'd promised back in June. I can't do this, I said, grabbing my plate and sliding it away like the pie was the problem. You guys said you'd try. You said after counseling you'd try. We're not even through the season. We did try, Mom said, and now her voice shook for real. We tried so hard. We keep hurting each other. You mean you keep hurting each other in front of me? I said. So why are you trying to make it sound like a good thing now? Time apart sounds like quitting because it's easier. Dad's jaw worked. You don't know everything that's happened. I know enough, I said. I know I don't want 2 houses and 2 Christmases and 2 sets of lies for my friends. He reached across the table. His fingers stopped short of my hand like there was a glass wall between us. We're not abandoning you. Feels like it, I said. The words landed between the plates and sat there like a broken cup. The tap came again, not at the kitchen window this time. Farther down, by the dark hallway, the hair on my forearms rose. The air had a metallic taste, the way it does right before lightning finds the tallest thing in the field. The house seemed to lean, listening. Mom forced her eyes back to me. We'll keep things as normal as we can. You'll stay here. You'll keep your room. Your dad will get a place nearby. We'll make a schedule that works for you, with school, with track. We'll be there. Schedule, I said, and laughed, ugly and tight, like a chore chart. Monday with Mom, Tuesday with Dad. Someday, I get the dog if we get one, but we never did because we were too busy fighting. She swallowed. That's not fair. None of this is fair, I shot back. Dad rubbed his thumb over the scar on the table from when he dropped a pan fresh from the oven years ago. The scar had bubbled the varnish into a pale blister. We're trying to do this right. The least painful way. There isn't a least painful way, I said. There's just pain. He flinched like he could feel it. For a heartbeat, his face cracked open, and I saw him tired and scared, not for himself, but for me. It softened something in my chest I didn't want softened. I pushed the feeling away and let the anger fill that space again. It was simpler. Lightning flared. The blinds flashed white, then went back to gray. Another sound drifted in from the hall, a low scrape, not wood on wood, not the rattle of the back door, more like weight sliding across tile. Mom's head tilted. Dad's eyes shifted. He opened his mouth, closed it, and put the fake smile back on like armor. We can face this as a family, he said. That's what matters. Family, I repeated, the word sharp. Like the kind that doesn't split down the middle. Something inside me broke. I stood so fast my chair skittered back and clipped the wall. I'm done, I said, voice shaking. I'm not sitting here while you make speeches about how it's not my fault. It's insulting. Evan, please, Mom said, reaching for me. I stepped back. Don't. I need a minute. Dad rose. Take a breath. We can talk more. We're not finished. I am, I said. I turned away from the table, from their hurt faces, from the pie that tasted like apology. The hall felt colder than the kitchen. My socks soaked up a tiny puddle by the back door where the wind must have pushed rain in under the threshold. The lock rattled on its own, a quick, nervous tremor. I tried not to look at it. The house creaked like it was clearing its throat. Evan, Dad said, softer now. I couldn't look back. I walked to my room, pushed the door shut behind me, and forced the bolt. The air was warmer in here, heavy, like I'd been breathing it for years. My posters stared down. My running shoes sat where I'd kicked them earlier, the laces a tangle. I pressed my palms to my eyes until colors swam. Tears came in hot bursts, then anger rolled back in to dry them. I paced between the bed and the desk. I could hear their voices in the kitchen, low and urgent. They sounded like static under the rain. A soft sound touched the window. Tap, another, closer to the corner. The storm hissed against the glass, but this was different, delicate at first, purposeful, like someone testing a surface, learning its give. I told myself it was the maple. It had to be the maple. The lights flickered once, twice, a subtle pulse that slid over my posters and left them waxy and pale for a second. The house hummed, braced against another thunder roll. I took a breath that felt like it scraped my chest on the way in and held it until my ribs ached. I told myself I just needed 10 minutes. I told myself they'd be better at this if I gave them space to rehearse their lines. I told myself a lot of things while the rain licked the glass and the wind tested the eaves. The tap came again, closer, then a slow, dry drag, as if a nail had found paint and wanted to see what was under it. I stood very still and listened. The tapping didn't stop. It spread, first at one corner of the window, then the other, then higher up where no branch could reach. I backed toward my bed, every nerve in my body telling me it was the tree, just the tree, even though the rhythm was too steady, too intentional. Then, from somewhere deeper in the house, glass shattered. A sharp, violent pop, followed by a crash, as if a window had exploded in the kitchen or living room. Cold air and rain rushed through the house in a sudden draft that made my curtains flutter. The lights flickered once, then went out completely. For a moment, there was only the storm, wild and unfiltered, and my own shallow breathing. The house felt enormous in the dark, every creak magnified. "Mom," I whispered. My throat was tight. "Dad." A floorboard gave under weight, not mine. Each step heavy, measured, like something creeping forward with purpose. Somewhere in the hall. I opened my door a crack, heart racing. The hall was black, shadows shaped by lightning through the thin curtains. The air smelled wrong, like wet fur and iron. Then, a hand clamped over my mouth. I jerked back, ready to fight, but Dad's face flashed pale in the stormlight. "Quiet," he breathed, voice low and urgent. He pulled me close, arm wrapped tight around my chest. His shirt was damp with sweat. Mom appeared behind him, barefoot, clutching the heavy iron skillet she used for Sunday breakfast. Her other hand shook, but her eyes didn't. They found mine in the dark, wide and sharp with fear. Something moved in the kitchen, a scrape across linoleum, claws maybe, dragging. The sound of breathing, wet, ragged, too deep to belong to a man. Dad lowered us both until we crouched, knees pressed to the floor. "It's in the house," he mouthed. The words nearly broke me. My chest hammered against his arm. The thing padded through the dark. Its weight shifted the air, stirred dust, made the floor vibrate in small pulses. A growl rolled out, low enough to crawl up my spine and freeze there. Mom held the skillet higher. Lightning flashed again, painting the hall in white for less than a second. The shape moved past the kitchen doorway, broad shoulders, hunched, fur slick with rain. Long arms that brushed the floor even when bent. A snout lifted, testing the air. My blood turned to ice. The Dogman was real. All the stories I'd scrolled late at night, the forum posts, the shaky cell phone footage, they weren't crazy people. The beast stopped, head cocking. Its ears twitched. It sniffed, careful and steady, like it had all the time in the world to find us. Mom touched Dad's arm, signaling toward the stairs. Dad shook his head, pointing to the den instead, closer, easier to barricade. We moved as one, each step cautious, drawn out, following the gaps between the storm's thunder, so the floorboards' creaks blended in. My father's hand never left my shoulder, steering me, steadying me. The Dogman's claws clicked against tile. Then silence. It was listening. I swallowed, but Dad's hand tightened, warning me even that sound could matter. We reached the den door. Mom eased it open. It squealed faintly, and the beast answered with a sharp growl, closer now. "Go," Dad whispered, pushing me inside first. I stumbled onto the rug, heart thudding like a drum. Mom slipped in after, skillet raised. Dad followed, shutting the door behind him with agonizing slowness. Then claws hit the hallway floor, heavy, pounding. Coming for us. Dad shoved the couch against the door, muscles straining. Mom dropped to her knees, pulling me down beside her. I clutched her arm, eyes wide in the flicker of stormlight leaking through the blinds. The Dogman slammed against the door. The couch shuddered, wood groaning. Dust fell from the ceiling. Its claws scraped at the frame, furious, determined. And in that moment, crouched between my parents in the dark, I felt the shift. Divorce didn't matter. Arguments didn't matter. Nothing mattered except the three of us holding our ground. We were all we had. The Dogman roared, a sound that rattled dishes in the kitchen and vibrated in my ribs. "Stay with us," Dad said, voice steady, his body braced against the couch. "We're not letting it take you." Another slam, harder. The wood cracked. Mom tightened her grip on the skillet. "Then we fight," she said. And I knew we would. The couch groaned against the door as another slam rattled the frame. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. My dad's arms locked against the wood, muscles straining while my mom crouched beside me, skillet raised high like a soldier's shield. The Dogman's growl deepened. The sound rolled through the house, vibrating the floor, shaking inside my ribs. It wasn't just trying to get in. It was promising what would happen when it did. The couch jumped forward, skidding an inch. The door cracked at the hinges. "We can't hold it like this," Dad hissed. "We need a plan." "Kitchen," Mom whispered, eyes darting. "Knives. Fire." "No time," Dad said. His eyes flicked toward the fireplace across the den. A stack of seasoned logs leaned in the corner, iron tools resting on the hearth. The couch bucked again. A claw split the door, ripping through the wood with ease. Thick fur, wet and black, showed in the gap. Dad's eyes went sharp. "Evan, poker, now." I scrambled across the rug, nearly slipping. My fingers found the iron rod, cold and heavy, the hooked tip made for pulling logs. The beast slammed again, forcing the couch nearly a foot back. Its head shoved through the splintered gap. Lightning lit up the den, showing its face in full for the first time. A long muzzle, dripping with rain, fangs slick with saliva. Eyes a molten amber, wide and focused, locked on us. It roared, the sound so violent the pictures on the wall shook free of their nails and fell. "Get ready," Dad shouted. The Dogman shoved harder. Its claws raked the couch, tearing fabric and wood. One arm wedged through the crack, clawed fingers stretching, reaching. Mom swung the skillet. The iron smashed down on its arm. The beast howled and ripped back, gouging the wood deeper. The door burst wide enough for its head to force through. It snapped at the air, teeth clashing inches from my father's face. "Evan!" Dad shouted, and I didn't hesitate. I drove the poker forward with everything in me. The hook sank into its muzzle. The Dogman reeled back with a furious scream, blood spraying across the doorframe. "Now!" Dad roared. He shoved the couch tighter against the frame, bracing it with his full weight, while the beast thrashed on the other side. Mom pressed her shoulder beside him, skillet still clenched tight and ready to swing the second it broke through. The beast roared and hammered the door, rattling the frame until the hinges bent. "We can't stay boxed in," Mom said, voice shaking but strong. "It'll tear us apart." "Basement," Dad said quickly. "Tools. Propane tank. We make a stand." The word basement made my stomach twist. Dark, small, nowhere to run, but the way he said it made me nod. He opened the side door of the den and motioned, "Go." We ran single file through the hall, the storm flashing through broken glass behind us. The Dogman slammed into walls, following, tearing through plaster and wood. The basement door loomed ahead. Dad yanked it open. "Down!" Mom went first, skillet still in her hand. I followed, nearly falling in the dark. Dad pulled the door shut behind us and jammed a chair under the knob. The beast hit the other side an instant later, shaking the frame, dust falling into our hair. The basement smelled of oil, damp earth, and metal. Shadows stretched long from the stormlight, leaking through a tiny window. Dad grabbed a crowbar from the workbench. Mom shifted the skillet to her left hand and lifted the long-handled axe that leaned by the shelves. The basement door shook on its hinges, each blow from above rattling through the frame. Dad jammed the chair tighter under the knob and turned to us, breathing hard but steady. "We can't just swing and pray," he said, voice low. "We need a plan." Mom gripped the axe in both hands, her face pale but fierce. "Then tell us." Dad's eyes flicked to the propane tank in the corner, half empty from the grill. "We can't kill this thing by brute force. Not with what we've got. But fire might finish it." My stomach twisted. "You mean blow it up?" "Not a full explosion," he said quickly. "We puncture the line, let gas fill the corner. Then we draw it in close and light it." Mom nodded once, her jaw set. "So we flank it, box it in. You hit right, I hit left. Evan, you're faster than either of us. You draw its attention, make it chase you into the gas." Fear twisted through me, but I nodded. For the first time tonight, I felt like part of the fight. The chair upstairs cracked. Wood splintered. The basement door flew open and the Dogman thundered down, shoulders scraping the frame. Its eyes glowed in the dark, like coals fanned to life. "Positions," Dad barked. The beast lunged, claws gouging concrete. I darted forward, banging the poker against the floor. Sparks rang out, metal on stone. "Over here," I shouted, my voice shaking but strong. The Dogman snapped its head toward me. Its lips peeled back, fangs dripping. It charged, huge claws tearing the floor as it bore down. I held my ground until the last second. Then I dove sideways, rolling across the concrete. The Dogman barreled past where I'd stood, straight into the corner, choked with gas. "Light it," Dad roared. Mom shoved a box of rags across the floor. Dad struck the crowbar against the concrete, sparks catching on the fabric. Flames raced along the trail, blooming into a sudden wall of fire that surged across the floor toward the tank. The Dogman stepped into the blaze just as the gas ignited. Fire roared up, engulfing it in searing light. It shrieked, clawing at its own face as flames raced through its fur. But it didn't drop. Came through the fire like a nightmare, fur smoking, jaws snapping, eyes burning hotter than ever. It lunged at Dad and slammed him against the wall, claws raking his shoulder. He cried out, blood darkening his shirt, but he jammed the crowbar into its ribs with a roar of his own. Mom swung the axe, but the beast whipped an arm out and caught her side. She staggered, the blow ripping across her ribs, pain flashing across her face. Still, she gritted her teeth and raised the axe again. I darted in, driving the poker into its flank. The iron sank shallow, but the Dogman spun, one claw swiping across my arm. The pain was white-hot, like fire under the skin, and I stumbled back, blood dripping down to my wrist. Creature roared, half on fire, half insane with rage, thrashing wildly. Tools flew from shelves. The workbench splintered under its weight. It slammed Dad down again, crowbar clattering away. "Dad!" I screamed, rushing forward. I jammed the poker into its shoulder, all the way to the hook. The Dogman howled and twisted toward me. That gave Mom the opening. She swung the axe with every ounce of strength she had, the blade crunching deep into its neck. Blood sprayed across the concrete, sizzling where it hit the flames. Dad staggered to his feet, face smeared with sweat and blood. He grabbed the fallen crowbar and, with a snarl I'd never heard from him before, drove it down into the Dogman's skull again and again. I pulled the poker free and stabbed down into its chest. Mom wrenched the axe free and swung again. We struck together, over and over, until the creature's thrashing slowed, its growls turned to wheezing gurgles, and finally it collapsed in a steaming, bloody heap. For a long moment, none of us moved. My chest heaved. My arm burned where the claw had cut me. Mom clutched her side, blood soaking through her shirt. Dad leaned on the crowbar, shoulder torn and bleeding. We were scraped, bruised, hurting, but alive. Upstairs, the house was wrecked. Broken glass littered the kitchen. Rain poured through shattered windows. Blood smeared the floorboards where the beast had stalked. Dad grabbed the phone and called 911. His voice was steady, almost calm, as he told them something broke in, something attacked. But when help came, it wasn't the sheriff or local cops. Engines idled outside. Heavy boots hit the porch. Men in black uniforms swept into the house, rifles raised, faces hidden behind visors. Their movements were silent, efficient. Within minutes, they were in the basement, hauling the Dogman's body onto a black tarp and dragging it out like cargo. One man in a gray suit sat at our table, papers already spread. His eyes were flat as stone. "You'll sign," he said. "You'll never speak of this again. Not to neighbors, not to friends, not to anyone. What you saw tonight doesn't exist." Mom's hand trembled as she signed. Dad stared at the man for a long moment, then scribbled his name with a glare that could have cut stone. Finally, the pen slid toward me. I looked at them both. They nodded. My hand shook, but I signed. When the men left, the house felt empty, hollowed out. The rain kept falling, thunder rolling somewhere deep in the hills. But when we stood together in the kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage, something had shifted. Mom slipped her arm around my shoulders. Dad put his hand on my back. Their eyes met, and for the first time in months, they didn't look away. "We'll figure this out," Dad said, quietly, together. Mom nodded. "We are not breaking. Not after this." I leaned into them both, my chest still burning from smoke and fear. But for the first time in a long time, I believed them. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, we stood unshakable. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Descent into the Unknown for more horror content. If you have any real cryptid encounters, or you're a horror writer wanting to share your stories, please feel free to email me in the description anytime.